The purpose of recording tonight will be to share this with other newly admitted graduate students from our 3 schools of the David Geffen School of Medicine, the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health, and the UCLA Anderson School of Management. Oh, this is just fantastic. We have well over 160 people and more people joining. So we're very, very thrilled to have you with us tonight. This is a collaborative effort by these 3 very important anchor schools within the broader UCLA community. But on behalf of all of UCLA Graduate Study, we do welcome you tonight, wherever you may be. And we know that people are logging in from around the state, around the nation, and around the world. And we're very, very grateful to have you all with us tonight. My name is Dylan Stafford. I'm an assistant dean, and I am one of your co-hosts tonight. I've been working with Professor Kush Cooper on this project for the last 4 years, and with our committee this year. We actually had this Leadership Lab series last year within the UCLA Anderson School as a pilot for new fully employed MBA students, and this year we are thrilled to get to expand and have this interdisciplinary experience that you're going to share tonight. So not only do we have a great conversation about what is leadership and what does it mean to you, and what kind of leader do you want to be while you're in grad school, and possibly more importantly, what kind of leader do you want to be when you graduate from UCLA 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, whatever the case will be by our various programs. When you go out there to make a difference in the world, nothing changes until we raise our hand and say, excuse me, I have an idea. And that's about leadership, and leadership always begins, with awareness of who we are as people and why anyone would ever want to listen to us when we raise our hand in a professional setting or even in a personal setting. So we are just thrilled to get to have this experience together tonight. If I could advance to the next slide, I would love to introduce our co-host committee. And I think I will start. We'll I guess we'll go clockwise. So Sarika, would you like to say some words of welcome?
Of course. Welcome, everyone. This is a really unique event, and one where I'd love to just demonstrate really quickly the power of interdisciplinary connections. I now work at Anderson as the Executive Director of Admissions, but my previous role was actually Director of Admissions for the medical school at David Geffen, the role that Elisa holds now. And while I was there, I worked closely with Elizabeth Izquierdo, who's now Assistant Dean for Student Affairs. But now I work with Dylan, who introduced me to Kush. And so you can see that the power of connections is so strong that even on this slide, it's wholly demonstrated. So I hope you all get to experience that today. And welcome, and excited for you to meet other graduate students.
Thank you, Sarika, and thank you for your partnership. So Sarika and I run 2 of the MBA programs within Anderson. And she's one of those work colleagues that, if I had 5 more colleagues like Sarika, we could just change the world. But maybe I do have 5 more colleagues like that. So let me please now introduce Elizabeth Izquierdo from the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health.
Great, thank you, Dylan and Sarika. My name is Liz Izquierdo, and I'd like to say congratulations to all of you on your acceptance. And we are so excited to have you here tonight. And like Dylan said, this is the first time that we have done a joint interprofessional collaboration. And we're just so excited about the opportunity for you to meet other colleagues, for you to share ideas. And I just want to share that I went through this leadership class last summer, and it made me see leadership in a whole different way. And I hope that you're able to really take pieces of this and apply it to yourself as future leaders. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to just have my team say hello. A lot of you know our Director of Admissions, Michelle Garcia, and also Sequinder Sagu. So Michelle and Sequinder, can you unmute and say hello, please?
Yes, hi everyone. And I'm sorry, I think you may hear an echo. But welcome everyone, and to all of the Fielding School of Public Health students. It's been a great pleasure working with you so far, and I'm really looking forward to our continued collaboration.
Hello everyone, I'm Sequinder Sagu, and again, congratulations on the admissions to UCLA, and we look forward to seeing you in fall.
Thank you all. Okay, and now we would like to introduce the David Geffen School of Medicine as represented by Elisa Lopez.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So,
Yes, hello everyone. Delighted to see you all here today. Thank you so much for joining. Leadership is really important, and it doesn't matter which program you're going into. It's an element that we all need and is crucial for a graduate education. We talk about physician leaders at the David Geffen School of Medicine, but that also extends to all of the other programs. So we know that you'll find this program very rich and rewarding today, and can't wait to see you on campus coming up in the upcoming year. I just wanted to take a brief moment to introduce Travis McAllister, who is also here with us this evening. He is our admissions manager at the David Geffen School of Management.
Thank you, Elisa. And I could also introduce Erin Wimberly on my team. Erin, you want to unmute and say hi?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. This is super exciting. I also went through the Being a Leader course this summer, and it's come up pretty much every day. It's been really great. So I just can't wait to hear what value you all find from it.
Thank you, Erin. And thanks for helping us manage the waiting room, get everybody in the room. Gonzalo, I see Gonzalo Freixas. Would you be able to say a word of welcome?
Yes. How are you, everyone? I'm Gonzalo Freixas. I'm an associate dean here at the UCLA Anderson School. I oversee our executive and fully employed MBA programs. And on behalf of all of the schools and the Anderson School in particular, I'd like to welcome all of you. As has been mentioned, this is the first time we've done a joint event like this between Anderson's Business School, the schools of public health and medicine. And so we're very excited about the collaboration. And it's one of the strengths of getting your graduate degree or your professional degree here at UCLA is the fact that you can network across the campus with other schools. And a special thank you to Professor Cooper for participating in this, and then Dylan for putting it all together. So with her and the team. So anyways, thanks for coming. I'm looking forward to seeing at least a portion of this presentation, if not all of it. I do have a later meeting, but it's a unique opportunity, and it's all about the network and how you can expand it from here on in as you grow professionally. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you, Gonzalo, and thanks for the support to let us try new things. Natalie, I hate to put you on the spot, but the Master of Financial Engineering is our 5th cohort tonight, and you guys were a very late addition, so we didn't actually get you on the welcome slide. Would you like to say a brief word of welcome to your MFE students? Because I know we have at least 16 of them here tonight.
Of course, thank you for the introduction. My name is Natalie. I work for the Master of Financial Engineering program, and I'm the Career Services Coordinator, so on the end of finding internships and full-time positions, networking events, that's what myself and my team would be helping with. But I'm here today to just kind of support and be a part of this program. And also we want to expose our new admits to as much leadership training and positive interaction with other graduate students as possible. And we're really excited that all of you MFE admits are here. Yeah, and we just can't wait to get started. So thank you for that introduction and for including us.
Well, thank you for participating. So yes, we have 5 different programs of study represented here tonight, and we're just grateful to have this interdisciplinary experience. And when you're going to get to go into breakout rooms twice tonight, and in between the content that Dr. Cooper is about to share with us. And we just hope that you'll have a really rich conversation and get to meet some fellow new graduate students from across UCLA. So with no further ado, I'd like to now introduce Dr. Kush Cooper, who is a very respected colleague, adjunct professor in the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs, but I won't even professionally introduce her as much as I will personally introduce her. I've known Kush for 4.5 years now, and we've had the chance to collaborate across campus. And last year, she graciously led last year's pilot, which has turned into this much bigger experience this year, on behalf of our entering MBA students last year. And we took the lessons from that and we brought them forward into what you're going to experience tonight, and also in May and in June in Leadership Labs number 2 and 3, which we hope all of you will participate in. That you'll love tonight so much you'll want to come back and have even more, because leadership is one of those lifelong lessons. So what I love about Kush, she's my sister from another mother. She is a huge champion for people, and her commitment specifically is in the world of the foster care system. She has a commitment that the foster care system, which isn't possibly perfect, you know, which could be optimized on lots of different levels. She's really committed that the foster care system not just work, but work well and work for all populations, specifically LGBTQ foster youth is one particular area of focus, and she aims her incredible energy at making a difference at the state and national level. She speaks, she goes to Sacramento all the time. She lobbies on behalf of people who don't have a voice. She takes all the power of UCLA and tries to give it straight back to society to make a difference. And to get to collaborate with her these last 4 years has really been an honor for me. Over in the business school, where very often we're trying to make systems that make profits, to get to work with someone who is a social entrepreneur and whose heart is just as big as her brain, and both of which are very, very big. This is a woman of high impact. And it's just a pleasure to be your friend, Kush, and I learn from you every time you speak. So with no further ado, I'd like to hand tonight over to you, Dr. Kush Cooper.
Thank you, Dylan, for that very, very generous introduction. And, you know, thank you to the committee for, you know, we've put a lot of work in over the last year, and it's been every single meeting has been a pleasure. So, you know, just delighted to be part of this interdisciplinary team. And like you said, I'm an adjunct professor in the school, Luskin School of Public Affairs in the Department of Social Work. And, you know, part of how I got into worrying about leadership is that every implementation of every policy that I've worked with, every organization that I have been doing organizational development for, I can assess every single issue that presents itself and connect it to breakdowns in leadership. Really, everything comes down to leadership. And this is a new approach to leadership, relatively new, and it comes from a larger course that my colleagues have referenced. The course is called Being a Leader and the Effective Exercise of Leadership, an Ontological Phenomenological Model. And it primarily uses a slide deck textbook. And I'll tell you what we mean by ontological and phenomenological, because that'll sort of set the stage for what we're about to talk about. So ontological, by ontological we mean relating to being, right? Ontology is the study of being. So when you say to someone, go be a leader, what is that being that you're referring to? So that's the ontological aspect. And the phenomenological aspect of this particular approach is that it deals with leadership as an as-lived first-person, on-the-court phenomenon. It's a companion to the theoretical approaches to leadership, which look back at leadership having been exercised and put some theories together about why it worked. That's the ontological phenomenological model. So what we're going to cover over these 3 sessions, I'll give you the overview. We're going to talk a little bit about, you know, the title of this program and why we've called it Leadership Begins with Leading Yourself. Today we will then go into just inquiring into what makes extraordinary leaders. That'll take us into a conversation about 2 ways to live life. All right, you can live life on the court, and you can live life in the stands. You can you can probably imagine what I mean by that, but we'll delve into that a little more deeply. And then we'll end today with looking at the power of context. It's a context, and mastery over context is a key aspect of exercising effective leadership. So that'll be session 1, that'll be today. Session 2, we're gonna cover 2 of what I call the 4 fundamentals. They are, in our observation of hundreds of leaders, these are 4 ways of being and acting that we find are required for leadership to be effective. So, you know, in basketball, your fundamentals are you have to be able to dribble the ball, you have to be able to do a layup, you have to be able to pass the ball, and maybe, you know, shoot a 3-point shot. It's integrity, authenticity, being given being action by something bigger than yourself, and being cause in the matter. Those are what I would say are the 4 fundamentals of leadership, are the equivalent of those 4 fundamentals in basketball. And then we'll end session 3 by putting it all together. Anything else any of my colleagues would like to say about, you know, the arc of this journey that we'll take with our newly admitted cohort? And I'll check in with them from time to time, by the way. Anything for anyone? No? Okay. All right. So before, I want to set you up to listen to the conversation in a particular way today. So the first aspect of the kind of listening I'd like you to bring is you want to pull the conversation to you there in your seat, right? And especially because we're, you know, normally we do this program, we're in person with some folks, and then we're on Zoom with others. Due to the pandemic, we are all online, and so it's really easy to settle into this being like television, right? Like, because it actually kind of is, and you can tend to become passive when you're watching television and expect distinctions to be delivered to you. This is not that kind of conversation. You want to pull it to you. You want to apply it to your life as we're talking. Okay, so that's one aspect of how I'd like you to listen. The other aspect is, so we all have some experience, some understanding, and some notion based on the past of what leadership is or is not. Okay, what I'd like you to do today is what the philosophers call bracketing. All right, so literally, I'd like you to take everything that you know and understand about leadership, and put brackets around it, all right? And then move it to the side, just for the next couple hours, okay? So even if some of the words that I say sound familiar, or the distinctions sound familiar, try and listen to them newly, okay? That's the other aspect. And then, you know, with this material, figuring it out or understanding it or being able to make a model out of it is helpful, but it's kind of like the consolation prize. Really, what we would like you to do is to really get what there is and see it and discover it for yourself as you look in your own life. So I'd like you to do less thinking today and more looking, right? So those are sort of 3 aspects of how to listen. And the last one is this. This is a conversation, and it's an inquiry. None of what I'm about to say is, quote unquote, the truth, right? Listen to it like you're trying on a new coat, right? Try on what I'm saying like a possibility or an inquiry rather than an answer to anything, okay? So those are the 4 aspects of how I would like you to listen, okay? All right, so let's get into it. Here we go. So leadership begins with leading yourself, okay? Start with you and discover for yourself what it's like to lead yourself, and then you will be equipped with what you need to lead others. If you can't lead yourself, there's very little credibility you'll have in the matter of leading others. Okay, and the reason we've put this program together is to not only give you exposure to a new approach to cultivating your leadership and the leadership of others, but to also use the notion of leadership begins with leading yourself, to lead yourself to the best first quarter of an educational experience you've ever had, right? If you talk to our admissions professionals, you know, they'll talk about academic probation and, you know, counseling folks for, you know, that are at risk of being on academic probation during the year, particularly in the first quarter. And what you'll find is that it's not that folks aren't smart enough. It's not that folks aren't hardworking enough or dedicated enough or committed enough. It is that they just didn't prepare. They didn't prepare adequately for the transformational shift that happens in one's life when one enters graduate school. And so, you know, the session has these two goals: expose you to a new approach to cultivating leadership, which, as Elisa said, it is key to our mission here at UCLA. We want it to be a differentiator for us. And when you leave UCLA, you leave a leader. And to use the leadership to prepare for graduate school. All right. All right, so we're going to get you all talking to each other and breaking the ice a little bit. And in a moment, you're going to get sent into a breakout room, and you'll be in groups of 5. It is random, and we will hope for the most diversity possible in the group. But there may be a group where there's, you know, more than 1 or 2 of a particular person from a particular field, and that's okay. So when you get into your groups, here's what you want to do, and we will actually type this into the broadcast. We'll broadcast this to you in your groups as well. You want to introduce yourself by giving your name, the graduate school you got admitted to, and the area of interest within that field. Right, so if you got admitted to medicine and you're interested in nephrology, that's what you would say. Say a little bit to the folks in your group about what inspired you to choose UCLA and what inspired you to choose that field. Okay, so that's the introduction part. And then after you've done your introduction, you want to share the example of a respected leader that you put into your registration form, right? We were all asked to, we were asked to describe attributes of a respected leader. So you wanna talk to your group about why you chose that person and what attributes they manifest that has you designate them as being effective leaders. All right. So anything else before we send them to, oh yes, one more thing. When you will be in the same group for this session when we do our next small group discussion. And we will be leaving you with a homework assignment. It's not what you would think of as homework, but if you'd like to continue to talk about what you've started to delve into today with each other, then please exchange information. So you could start a text chain. You could follow up, exchange phone numbers, follow up with each other after. So that'll be the opportunity to do that in your small groups. All right, Dylan, are we ready to go? Are we ready to go into small groups?
Okay, I believe that I'm going to send us into about 35 rooms or so. And those of you who are on the host committee, you're welcome to be in a room, or you're welcome to not be in a room. Those of us who are on the committee, if we want to text and things. So we're going to send you into rooms. We're going to have 15 minutes for this module. So the idea is roughly 3 minutes a person. So we'll send everyone.
Come out.
We will resume. If everyone could please mute themselves. Actually, I'll mute everyone, and then Kush, if you could unmute yourself.
Yes.
All right, welcome back from the breakout room experience. If that was a little bumpy, I apologize. That was probably a user error on my part. We did have some people who were getting off work, so a few groups had people join late. So when we have a second breakout time later tonight, we would just please make everyone feel welcome and included. And we're just grateful that everybody's joining, even if they weren't able to join at the start, because we know there are many schedules that you're all balancing. So back to you, Kush.
Thank you, Dylan. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so you know, you've shared. We sent you a survey when you were registering, and we asked you to share one example of a leader you respect, personal or professional, and share what attributes of that leader stand out for you. Okay, and then what we did was we created a word cloud based on the responses. Okay. And there's the word cloud. And so you can see integrity, empathy, vision, collaboration, communication, respect. You know, those are the ones that show up often. And I love that integrity is smack dab in the center. Because if you said, hey, I can only have one of these 4 fundamentals, which one should I have? That'd be the one I'd choose. So right now, this is our answer to what makes an extraordinary leader. Okay. So let's look at that a little further. But first, I want you to consider that perhaps extraordinariness as a leader is as much about being, you could say, as it is about knowing. And in some cases, less about knowing and more about being. And those are distinct. Knowing how to be a leader is not the same thing as being a leader. It's like knowing how to ride a bicycle is not the same as actually riding the bicycle. Okay? One gives you an epistemological grasp of leader and leadership, the knowing, and one gives you an ontological grasp of leader and leadership. And there is a difference between talking about and studying leadership and actually leaving you being leaders. How do I know that? Well, I did this search again today on Amazon, and it's actually now 200,000 plus. But there are that many books on Amazon about leadership, right? And if reading a book did it, right, and we knew how to create leaders, statements like using an epistemological approach solely, then quotes like this wouldn't fill the literature, right? So Joseph Roast, scholars don't know what it is they are studying, and practitioners do not know what it is they are doing. Scholars of leadership and practitioners of leadership. Ron Heifetz, the grandfather of adaptive leadership. In most mature disciplines, the basic units of analysis and terms of reference are clearly and generally understood within that discipline. Yet, in the study of leadership, no such agreed upon conceptual underpinnings yet exist. And Warren Bennis, it is almost a cliche of the leadership literature that a single definition of leadership is lacking. And I would assert that if you looked at, I've looked at several articles in the field of social work that talk about leadership, and they all say that, well, a single definition in social work is missing. And if you looked at the medical literature, and if you looked at the business and management literature, I would bet that you would find the same thing. Folks saying, well, in our field, we really don't have a grasp of what leadership is. It's actually universal. So if we don't know what it is, right? How do we cultivate it? So we're going to back to our question about what makes extraordinary leaders extraordinary, okay? And there are two ways to answer this question. You can answer the question from the stands, or you can answer the question from the court. And I'm going to distinguish those two. So, but before I do that, I'm going to ask a colleague of mine to interact with me. Where are you, Elisa?
I'm right here.
All right. So, Elisa, you told me before the session that you played a competitive sport.
Yes, I played soccer.
So you played soccer. And so, like in any sport, right, there's the field or the court on which the sport is played, where the athletes are, and then there are the stands, right, where the observers are, the fans. Tell me what, and there are probably times as a player that you did hear what was going on in the stands. So what kinds of things do you hear coming from the stands? What kinds of
From the
sound bites?
stands, people are cheering, they're shouting out, you know, go here, do this, do that. You know, they're yelling at the coach, all those types of things.
Right, absolutely. And then in contrast to that, on the court or on the field where you are, what do you hear there?
Not too much at all. So each player has practiced a lot. They know what they're doing, and you might hear a word or two, but that's about it.
And what are the word or two you might hear? What might those be?
I got this, or something like that.
Yep. So they're action-oriented words on the field, and in the stands, there are words that are talking about what is going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. All right. So that's exactly how I want you to hold it. It's not more complicated than that. Thanks, Elisa. So let's distinguish in the stands first. So in the stands, being and action are observed and commented on, right? You're observing something and commenting on it. You're talking about it. You're interpreting it. You're describing it. You're explaining it. You may lean over to the person you're sitting next to and say, I can't believe they just called that play. Or you might be telling them what the rules are, or why, you know, that play particularly, or why that penalty flag was thrown, okay? In general, it's a third-person theoretical experience of the situation, all right? And we call that an epistemological grasp of the situation. So in contrast, on the court, it's being in action as they're being experienced. You're not talking about anything. You're in the experience. As lived, real time, right now, on the court. It's a first-person experience. And we call being able to experience something as lived, to be able to grasp the being of it, an ontological and a phenomenological grasp. Okay, so in the stands, describe, talking about, epistemological, on the court, as lived, real time, being. Okay. So there are two. So sorry, back to our question, right? What makes extraordinary leaders extraordinary? And I'm going to answer from the stands, and I'm going to answer from the court. All right. So here's what the answer looks like from the stands. Right? When you answer, well, what makes an extraordinary leader extraordinary? If you answer epistemologically, there's an assumption in the answers that extraordinary leaders have some key ingredient, like they were born with something that makes them extraordinary. They're natural. They have a knack for it. And we'll look at our great leaders, right? The ones you brought, the ones you respect. And then we attribute these ingredients to them, okay? And then we study those attributes. We we might watch film of those leaders, and then we try to emulate those characteristics. Right? So on the stands, you're in the stands looking at a leader. You presume, wow, they're great. You're presuming, wow, they're just a natural. Well, they're very charismatic. Well, and I need to be charismatic, so I'm gonna go work on being charismatic. Right? So that's what it looks like from the stand. And folks will say, well, they've got a mental toughness that others don't have. They've these key ingredients. Their belief system really supports them being a leader. They have some skills. They have a lot of training in being a leader. These are all versions of saying ingredients, right? Perhaps they had great supervision or mentorship. Perhaps the climate of the organization that they work in engenders leadership, right? But these are all sort of variables that we attribute to leaders, and then we go about trying to manifest those variables in ourselves. Right? So that's how it looks like from the stands when somebody asks you that question. Okay, so answering that question from the court, we're gonna answer that question from the court here over the next few slides, but it starts in a particular place, and I invite you to really take this on and look for yourself, right? And really establish this for yourself, that extraordinary leaders are ordinary people like you and me, right? They get irritated with their spouses. They leave their socks on the floor. Their breath smells in the morning, right? They have bad days. They are ordinary people like you or me, okay? I'm going to skip this next slide. So then it follows from that, okay, so if they are ordinary people like you and me, Kush, well, then what makes them such effective leaders? Okay. So maybe what makes them so effective, consider this, try it on, right? What makes them so effective is not what they know or any internal trait. Perhaps it is that they see, comprehend, and therefore interact with the world differently than most of us do. Another way of saying that is perhaps the world occurs or shows up for extraordinary leaders differently than what shows up for the not leader, right? The lay person, okay? So let's look into that a little more. So perhaps leadership is, so what I want you to take away is leadership. Perhaps it's less about what you know, and perhaps it's more about how you see. And by see, I mean hearing, processing, interpreting. I'm using see in the broad sense. All right. Another thing I want you to consider. So in any situation, there are the facts of the situation, right? What's actually happening, and then there are how the facts show up for us. And how the facts show up for us is idiosyncratic, in that it is unique to us. And how the facts show up for us might be based on our past experiences, our culture, our training, our belief system. But there is an idiosyncratic way in which the facts of a situation are going to show up for you, and that's going to be different than the facts show up for me versus Dylan, versus Elisa, versus Liz. Okay, so, and you've probably experienced this, but particularly in a close relationship, like with a spouse or with a parent, where you're debriefing the argument, and you go, "What? I never said that." And first, you absolutely did say that, right? And consider that nobody knows what was said, right? All you know is that something was said, and it occurred for you a particular way, right? And it occurred very differently to your spouse, right? or whoever you're in an argument with. All right. I'm going to give you an example of this from my professional experience. So I used to work at an organization called the Gay and Lesbian Adolescent Social Services. And it was an organization that had mental health services, residential treatment, foster care for LGBTQ children that were embroiled in the child welfare system. GLASS, as we used to call it, that's the acronym, went out of business. And pretty abruptly, the children that resided within GLASS's programs got scattered, right, like overnight. The LA LGBT Center sort of got wind of the closure, got wind of the children being scattered, and asked the Department of Mental Health for a small augmentation of a mental health contract they had to follow the youth. And so they did. And what they found wasn't particularly surprising. Many of the youth had, gone back into the closet. Many of the foster parents that they talked to said, well, we don't have kids like that here. And it was really clear very quickly that the children had gone back into really inhospitable environments. So the center wanted to do something about this, okay? So they called me. I was consulting by then, and I showed up and designed a program, and we started to shop it around within the county for funding. It was about 2010 that this was happening, and if you remember what was happening in 2010, we were in the middle of a recession, and there was no money laying around. So we just got no traction, and the center was even considering a class action lawsuit to see if we could bring funding to this problem that way, when I found a grant, a federal grant that would bring us $13 million over 5 years to do exactly what we wanted to do, which is reduce the barriers to permanency, to forever homes that these LGBTQ foster youth experienced. So there I am. I've got this grant. I take it to the chief of staff, and we got into a conference room with the team that would have deployed the program, and here's what I encountered. So this was the conversation. Look, the children are all over the place, completely decentralized. It's going to be really difficult outreach. The county has no money to match this, no way to support us. We've never been in the business of minors. We're an adult community center. We've certainly not been in the business of other people's minors, i.e. being the child welfare system. This grant calls for a rigorous evaluation, which you would expect for $13 million. We don't have an internal research infrastructure. And by the way, if you didn't notice, there's 2 weeks left in this grant announcement, Koosh. And for those of you that have written a federal grant, it takes every minute of the 6 weeks they give you. Those are the facts, and the team was asked to make a choice. Are we going to move forward with this funding opportunity? Okay, so there were the facts, right? They had the experience they had, the time they had, the infrastructure was the infrastructure, the county limits were the county limits. How those facts were showing up for them were, it's pointless, this is impossible, we're in no position to do this right now, we've got a whole bunch of other stuff, it's going to be a mistake, this will take us down. And so, essentially many ways of saying this is too steep a climb. And what do you imagine the team said when they were asked to make a choice? They said no, right? No, thank you, we're going to pass. So essentially their way of being, pointless, impossible, this is too steep a climb, and their actions saying no, we'll pass, were consistent with the way the situation occurred for them. And we would take those same actions if a situation occurred for us that way. All right. So the chief of staff at the center is a pretty extraordinary leader, and I sort of went back to him and said, the team's passing, and they've got some really good reasons. And he said, It's not acceptable. We need a different answer. So he and I go back into the room, and here's what he does. He creates this conversation called Every Day. And here's what he told them. He said, look, there is no other place for these children to go. We're it. Glass is gone. We've got all of Glass's data. We've got a drop-in center of LGBTQ youth 18 to 24. This grant clearly calls out for LGBTQ youth and child welfare. We don't know anybody else applying. We've got Kusha's consulting team. They're experts in the county. And most importantly, every day that we sit around and think about what there is to do, every day that goes by, you've got children in places that are inhospitable to them. You've got, you know, children in pain every day, okay? The facts hadn't changed in the, 45 or so minutes that we had the conversation again. It's the same experience, the same county limits, the same time left, well, maybe 45 minutes less in the grant announcement deadline. It's all the same, nothing had changed. What had shifted was how these facts occurred for them. And now with the leader saying every day, it occurred for them, it's like, well, if not us, who? And if not now, when? And they responded yes. Right? And as a result of every day, we actually submitted the thing early. We had the highest scoring proposal in the nation. It's to date still the highest amount ever given by the federal government to an LGBT cause. It put the plight of LGBT youth on the national stage. The court and the county sent us support letters to write this grant, and in 2 weeks we had 19 community partners sitting on a steering group to help us deploy this. So essentially, by shifting how the situation occurred for the team, right, and that's what the leader did, the actions the team took and the results those actions generated were completely different, okay? So maybe it's not what you know, maybe it's about how you see. All right, hold on, let me just move my slides. All right. So if that's the case, like if you're with me, right? Okay, so I'm trying that on, Kush. If that's the case, that it's about how you see, well, it's about how the world occurs for you. Well, what shapes how something occurs for me? What shapes how something shows up for me? And here's the answer. You're occurring, the way anything shows up for you is shaped by context. All right? What the chief of staff had done at the center is he had shifted the context inside which the facts showed up. Okay? So every situation, every single one, whether you're aware of it or not, shows up for you in some context or the other. Okay? A context then proceeds to constrain and shape. It's a shortcut. It constrains and shapes the way in which the situation occurs for you, right? And then consequently, you interact with the way the situation shows up for you, right? Not necessarily with the facts at hand, okay? The context is sort of like a cognitive lens or a screen through which you see the world, right? And the thing about lenses is that they're designed to highlight certain things, they dim other things, and there's some things with particular lenses that you may not even see, right? You may not see at all, that don't show up for you, okay? I'm gonna demonstrate the power of context here for you, all right? Okay, ready? Who's my reader?
I'm the reader.
All right, so Sarika is gonna read this paragraph, and I would recommend you read it along with her silently.
A newspaper is better than a magazine. A seashore is a better place than a street. At first, it is better to run than to walk. You may have to try several times. It takes some skill, but it is easy to learn. Even young children can enjoy it. Once successful, complications are minimal. Birds seldom get too close. Rain, however, soaks in very fast. Too many people doing the same thing can also cause problems. One needs lots of room. If there are no complications, it can be very peaceful. A rock will serve as an anchor. If things break loose from it, however, you will not get a second chance.
Very good, thank you. So, you know, when you first read this, Sarika, did it make any sense to you?
Not at all.
Not at all, right? And if it does make sense to you, come talk to me.
Yeah.
Because you got a different problem. It's nonsensical, it makes no sense, right? On the next slide, you're gonna see the paragraph again, okay? Okay, and I want you to just sort of read it to yourself again quickly, scan it. Okay, right, still makes no sense. Okay, now watch this. Okay, all of a sudden, a whole world of KITE snaps into place, right? The context of KITE adds intelligibility to sentences that before made no sense, okay? So part of the takeaway here is that you need context, right? Otherwise, the world is gonna occur for you like the paragraph before you had the word KITE, right? It's just gonna come at you as disconnected pieces of data, okay? You need context to make sense of the world. There's just consequences because that context dims certain aspects of the situation, it highlights others, and there's some things you don't even see. Like, I never said that. Yes, you did. I didn't say that. You didn't hear yourself say that because of the context you had for that situation. Okay? Context is powerful. All right, I'm going to give you another demonstration. Okay? Darley and Bateson in 1973, they did this experiment where they went to seminary. So seminary is a place where folks who are going to go into the divinity industry get advanced education, right? And they told the story of the Good Samaritan parable to this group of seminarians in the experiment. Okay. Then they said, you're going to give a talk on this parable in that building across campus. Here's the map. Okay. You know, and they told half of them that, you know, they needed to walk over there, and that's all they told them. And they told the other half of them that they were late, right? That they really needed to hurry. There wasn't a lot of time left, okay? Then the experimenters put a slumped over, sort of moaning man in the path toward the building where they're supposed to be giving this talk. And what they wanted to see is who stops to help, okay? Now, these are seminarians, right? Just like us social workers, they've taken a personal vow to help people. All right, so let's see what happened. 10% of the seminarians who thought they were gonna be late stopped to help. Okay, it's a pretty shocking statistic, right? I find this statistic even more shocking. That, I mean, 63, you know, 63% of the ones that were on time didn't, you know, stop to help, which means there were 37% of them that didn't. But I tell this story to you to demonstrate that perhaps it's not the convictions of your heart that guide your actions. Perhaps it's not your intentions that guide your actions. Perhaps it is the context that you are, that has the world occurring for you a certain way that guides your action. Okay, and I can give you example after example of how the context, how we say it, is decisive, right? It's decisive because it has the power to shape and color the way a situation shows up for you. It determines your way of being and acting, and you could say, so to speak, it uses you. It shapes your being and your acting. So, you know, so I do want you to look for yourself. Like right now, where are you? Okay, you're sitting somewhere or standing. You're looking at a screen, right? You're seeing me in a little rectangle, right? And I'm talking, right? We're on a Zoom webinar, right? We're in a Zoom. So you have a context for this situation, right? We're in a program, right? We're in an online program, right? So that context, rather than we're on a football field, right, governs what you do, right? When you will go into the breakout rooms because, hey, we're on a program, right? So, you know, you think you raised your hand? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's the context that raised your hand. Right? All right. So in context, there's two kinds that we find when you go to look at context. There's default context and there's created context. And I'm going to distinguish those two for you. Okay? So a default context is one that automatically comes with the situation. Okay? It's often constructed out of the past. So you know that you're in an online program because you've likely been in one before, right? And you've likely you understand the MO and how you're supposed to behave, right? Automatically, the minute we let you in from the waiting room, this showed up for you a particular way. Really, there's a screen, there's rectangles, and there's somebody talking, right? But it shows up for you as program. Default contexts are already always there, okay? In that many we've inherited, like down from civilization to civilization, okay? Many of them come from our past, right? But they have an already alwaysness to them in that they're there before you choose to behave, and they're already there, and they're always there, and that they're constant. Okay, so that's a default context. Big takeaway comes from the past. So a created context. In contrast, a created context is brought from the future, right, back into the present, right? It's not coming from the past, it's coming from the future. A created context will, when it replaces the default context, shed new light on the facts, right? You're going to shed light one way or the other. Like, you're going to have a context, but it's going to reveal new possibilities for dealing with the conditions that you perhaps didn't see in the past derived context. In other words, it allows you to see possibilities for dealing with the situation beyond what is allowed by your past. So when leadership is needed most, right, it's usually when there is no answer, there is no precedent, we don't know how we're going to get to where we want to get. Right? That is when leadership is most needed, and the past isn't going to help you. Right? The default context is not going to help you. You're going to need a created context. What does this all have to do with leadership? It's a critical part of the effective exercise of leadership. Your ability to be able to replace the default context with a created context. Okay? And this is not positive thinking. Like, what I liken positive thinking to, and pardon the sort of crass analogy, is putting icing on cow dung, thinking that it's going to go down any better. Okay? That's what positive thinking is like. Creating a context is authentic, and it comes from a vision of the future that is allowed for by what's going on in the present, okay? By the way, what's key to the effective exercise of leadership is also being able to replace the default context you came here with regard to leadership, with a created context for leader and leadership. And if you took the larger course with us, we'd spend days creating that context, okay? All right, so we're now back to where we started. Leadership begins with leading yourself, right? And so we've just distinguished default context, created context. So perhaps the first aspect of leading yourself will be taking a default context, right, and replacing it with a created context. So we're gonna demonstrate that for you. We're gonna have you do it. Okay. So here's the question, okay, that you're gonna answer. When does your UCLA degree begin? Okay, and how this is going to work is we will put you in your groups after I cover the next few slides to set up the discussion, and you will actually, we will leave you in your groups, right, to continue this discussion so that it tees you up for the homework assignment that I'm about to lay out. Does that make sense? My colleagues, does that communicate? Okay, good. All right, so when does your UCLA graduate degree begin? All right, and all right, so how answering from a default context, I don't know, Dylan, what would you, what did you first say when we asked ourselves this question? Well, when does it start, Dylan?
Well, yeah, so in Anderson, grad school starts, we have orientation, which is called Leadership Foundations. So the admissions team gives the entering students as a group, we give them to the current student team. And you have a UID and you've got a university email, and the dean stands on the stage and grad school starts. So Monday, I think this year it's August 26th. That's the default context. Admissions is over. Grad school has begun.
Absolutely, and I mean, and without this distinction, I mean, everybody that you'd ask would answer, well, it starts in August or it starts at orientation, right? That's answering the default context. Okay, so we're going to now have you look at this from a created context. Okay, so when does your UCLA graduate degree begin? It begins now, like right now, like this minute at 6:53 p.m. today. Okay, and we put this quote up by Coach John Wooden. Failure to prepare is preparing to fail, is because if it begins now, right, this has the opportunity or the possibility of shifting your way of being and acting and the actions you take such that you're empowered to prepare for grad school in a proactive and effective way. Okay, so congratulations, everyone. Grad school just began. All right, and now here's the homework assignment. And you're going to start talking about the homework assignment in your groups, but I also want you to sort of take it out into your life between now and the next session. Okay, so here's the homework. I want you to go out in the court of your life, right? Like there you are tomorrow morning, safer at home, which is where most of us will be, probably doing work of some sort, staring at some sort of screen, right? In our apartments, in our homes, with our families and friends. I want you to notice how your way of being and acting may or it may not shift if your degree has already begun. Right? Tomorrow your degree is going to have begun yesterday. Right? So I want you to start to notice what actions become available to you that wouldn't have been available to you if, well, it starts at orientation. Okay? So that's the homework assignment. A couple of housekeeping things before we go. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to start with the group. You're going to start to notice what shifts, right, and what the new you're just going to brainstorm about it. Here are the next sessions. Session 2, Tuesday, May 19th, 2020, same time. And then the last session is Tuesday, June 16th. Okay. So with that, okay, with that created context, I'm going to ask my team to put you back into the breakout rooms. Again, exchange contact information. You know, something that I thought would, rather than noticing in monologue what's happening or how the shift in context has changed your way of being and acting, doing it in dialogue will be that much more valuable. So if there's a way for you to start a dialogue with the people in your group, right, about what you're noticing, you know, you could do a text exchange, you know, that's available to you, or dialogue with the people in your life about the new context that got created, right? But try and do it out here rather than in here. All right, I think, anything else, team, before we send them out?
Kush, could you go back to the few slides so they can see kind of what they'll be talking about, just as a reminder if they wanted to take a screenshot?
Absolutely. All right.
And I just, you know, Kush, for me, even for everybody, you know, as was said earlier, congratulations, you earned a seat at UCLA, but you earned that seat in a different context, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago in the pre-COVID world. And, you know, I'm on this committee tonight, and we're so grateful that you've all chosen to attend. But, you know, this is my first pandemic context. This is the first time I've lived through a pandemic, and hopefully it'll be the last time. And who's gonna create a future where we don't have to do this again? It's gonna be you all. In medicine, you're gonna discover the science. In public health, you're gonna put together the policy. And in management, we're gonna be trying to execute. And so the context even of the people on this call tonight, as you launch graduate school, as you launch your own future, you know, you're the heroes who are going to figure out how we don't have to go through this again, is a created context. You know, that we're not just offering you a nice icebreaker tonight, we're actually introducing you across campus, across discipline, such that you all can create the future that the world is waiting for really as a possibility. So
that's really great. Thank you, Dylan.
Okay, well, with no further ado, we are going to send you back into your rooms. You'll be in the same room you were in earlier with a few people who were coming late from work joining in, so please create space, make them feel welcome. We set this up as a 2-hour event, so you've got a full half hour. Take all of it, as much as you want. We will leave the Zoom on beyond 7:30, so if you're enjoying a conversation, you want to keep going, we invite you to do that. So enjoy this conversation, and we will send you back into the breakout rooms. And thank you again, Kush, for all of your leadership with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for your listening.
Here we go.